Oh, there we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, elephants and rhinos, however you choose to identify this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you might be listening, if you are listening. And given our ratings, I'm pretty sure you're not. But I am Mike, and it is time once again for the worst 120 minutes or so in all of sports. Yes, it is time once again for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. I am joined, as always, by my faithful partner in all things podcasting, producer Stead. How goes it this evening?
It's going pretty good. I'm realizing that this is probably, I could say, at least in my memory, the busiest summer for women's soccer. It is, for those of us who are not as completely under the table and swamp, it is the tournaments that are going on is extensive, and you're seeing a lot of new countries coming in. And I'll talk more about this after we do our introductions, but I can say that this is clearly going to be this is the summer of women's soccer.
You are right. The Women's Euro was delayed by a year. You only get the CONCACAF W Championship once every 4. So, yeah, you are 100% correct. It is the busiest summer of women's soccer. And much like that summer a couple of years ago, when we had the Gold Cup, the Copa América Centenario, and the Euros all in 1 year, we're looking at, and we can safely say, probably 26, 24 of the 32 teams that will be competing in the Women's World Cup next year are competing right now. So yes, it is a great summer for women's soccer, and that is what we're going to pay tribute to throughout this pod. We're also joined by our good friend, Professor Matt. Professor Matt, how are you doing this evening?
Grateful for cold beer. I have no idea what the temperature is like down by you guys in the DC area, but it's
hot.
Horrendous.
It's hot. It's hotter. As somebody's told me, it is hotter than the devil's armpit.
How is London Sean making out? I know it's like 100 over there or something. Has anyone heard anything from him?
We did. It was his birthday.
Oh,
this weekend. So in true London Sean fashion, for his birthday, London Sean went out with a group of his friends on Saturday, and we have not heard from him since. We trust that he is safe because he does this on a regular basis. But to my knowledge, London Sean went out for his birthday, which I believe was Saturday. And we trust that we will see him, nearly about next Monday, Tuesday, when we record again. And he'll be back. But there's a lot of stuff going on in England. So there is cricket. There is women's Euros. There is Formula One racing. There is any number of things that London Sean could be getting up and into right now, and plenty of betting to be done. So I expect London Sean to come back and be a couple of pounds heavier from the drink and a couple of pounds lighter from the losses. Stead, I got to ask you a question. As we're sitting here, you're wearing a jersey that I cannot identify.
That was the goal. I had to go deep to find something that no one else has, and I can honestly say this jersey is actually a rec team jersey of a small club in Okinawa, Japan, where my parents live. And you see on the back, there's some Japanese characters there, which I can read, but I couldn't translate. But yes, this was sent to me a little while ago, and as you see, this is actually my stepmother's nephew, who's probably half my size. This is his jersey, so it's a little snug on me. But yeah, that's where this is from. And I thought it was maybe a D2 or a team that was a bit lower on their pyramid over there, the J League pyramid. But no, this is a rec team jersey. And I was like, what could I put on today that would make absolutely no sense at all? I found it. I was like, perfect. I'm going to put this on.
Full credit for that one. I'm not going to come up with that. For those of you who are listening or watching, I am currently sitting here in a Barbados Trident. What used to be the Barbados Trident. They are a Caribbean Premier League cricket side. They have since become the Barbados Royals. Jason Holder, who is was the former captain of the West Indian cricket team, Test cricket team. So this is his T20 Caribbean Premier League jersey that I am wearing. I thought that I had the most random jersey until Stead pulled that out. So rock on. And as a teaser, because we always need to do one next week, everybody's favorite show. Next Tuesday, we are doing our 2022-2023 club kit preview show. Not to get too much into it, I have some thoughts. Stead is going to be putting together the PowerPoint so that you guys can see what we come up with. I have some ones that are going in as my favorites. I have some ones that are going into that is my worst. Matt, you and I have talked about some thoughts on Liverpool jerseys. We will share that next week. So if you want to really hear what we think about the sartorial splendor that will be soccer in the year 2022-2023 club edition, we will be doing that next week. I also say that to tease the fact that because we are only doing a club edition, that means that we will be doing a World Cup edition come late October, early November. Once the World Cup. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to get through all 32. I think what we'll do is we'll pick our best and our worst, and we'll go through those. But I'm really looking forward to that. That's one of my favorite shows of the year. I love talking jerseys, and there are some good ones out this year. There are some bad ones. There are some ones that I'm not 100% sure of. But tune in next week, and then you can see them. But as Stead said, this has been the summer of women's soccer. So I actually want to start continental and talk about the U.S. women and their 1-0 victory over Canada in the CONCACAF W Championship last night. We found out a couple things. Number one, this is the 9th time that the U.S. women have won this particular title. Courtesy of Alex Morgan, we figured out that this cup can hold approximately 20 margaritas. That is very important. The U.S. women went through this tournament and avenged a semifinal loss in the Olympics to Canada, scoring 13 goals, conceding none. And apparently, the U.S. women have not conceded a goal in this tournament since the Adams administration. And I'm not talking about John Quincy. It has been over 4,000 minutes, over 4,700 days. Now, granted, this tournament's only held once every 4 years, but well over 500 minutes since the U.S. women conceded a goal in this tournament. For me, this was their best performance of the tournament. The finishing left a lot to be desired. but more than half the team have less than 20 caps. This is a very young, very new, as I said on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, a team that we're going to have to get used to. This is not the same team that won the World Cup 4 years ago and won the bronze medal in the Olympics 3 years ago. There's been a lot of change. It is interesting to watch. You feel like there is still a lot of potential, a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for hope. There's also a part of me that says, hey, when some of these women come back and get back to full fitness, get back to full availability, Julie Ertz, for instance, who is out pregnant right now, bring her back in. We can use her. So, instead, I don't know if you watched this or followed this, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the U.S. women and their performance in this tournament and in this particular game against Canada.
Yeah, I didn't watch, but I followed. It was apparent that I think Canada seemed to be more like playing not to lose than really actually kind of going for it. You can look at possession, but most of Canada's possession was in their own half. And from the highlights I did see, and just from what I've read and what I saw, but that's not surprising. That's not surprising. I mean, I was listening to, I forgot the name of the show on Sirius XM, and they had a pundit on there, a woman who really, she gives very detailed explanations, and I've been trying to follow her a lot when she pops on because I love her analysis. But she talked about how this Canadian team, even though they're the defending gold medalists, how they're still kind of growing into the sport, and they're still sort of kind of figuring out how they're going to progress. And it's almost like we're seeing something similar to what's happening with the men's team with Canada, where they're still trying to figure out, like, wow, we're actually kind of good at this game. How do we pursue this? I mean, as far as Canadian women are concerned, of course, they're known for their hockey, but they're also known for their extensive abilities in track and field. They've been very competitive on that end for a very long time. So seeing them come up in soccer is still something that they're growing towards. As far as the tournament's concerned, I mean, sadly, I think a knock on this was the fact that the United States only had to win 2 games and they already qualified for the World Cup. So, you know, that part of the tournament was kind of done, and it takes away from the interest from my perspective to even watch. I mean, the U.S. women are just so dominant. They're so dominant that to watch this from any perspective outside of who are going to be the new up-and-coming players that we should be paying attention to during the next Olympic or World Cup cycles, there really isn't the interest on my end on that. I mean, I've made no secret that I'm not the biggest follower of women's soccer, even though I follow a lot of women's sports. Soccer just doesn't happen to be one of them. And I'm trying to grow my interest. And I think if the games are more competitive, I would probably have more interest. They're just not competitive yet. And so I found myself kind of paying closer attention to what's going on with AFCON, because with AFCON, there's actually some drama going on over there. There might be a new champion, which they haven't had, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But still, though, U.S. is going to be favored to win every game they're in. And until that starts to change a bit more, I think that it's just going to be difficult to have a tournament of this stature that happens every 4 years actually mean anything more than just who are the veterans that are probably going to be moving on, and who are the young players that are come up and taking those positions. But I mean, the U.S. women's team is just so deep. They're just so deep. They're 3 deep at every position, and it's the level of dominance really just kind of comes to which countries are putting in the most resources into growing the game in their country. And hopefully we'll start to see that change. Oh, and I do want to say this. Big shouts to Haiti. Had some really good performances. They used to get beat 10-11-0, and they're getting really, really competitive. And we've said this on this show as well. Man, if that nation just could get some level of stability, the athletes that come out of there are absolutely phenomenal. They're absolutely phenomenal. And if they had an infrastructure and they actually had a legitimate support system to promote these athletes, there is no saying how good they can be. There's 9 million people living there, so they have the population. They just need the resources. But man, good for Haiti and good for Haitian women to show that they actually can step up and compete. And they're beating teams that, I think they beat Mexico, or was that Jamaica who beat Mexico? But they're winning. They're winning.
Jamaica, Mexico lost all of their games.
Yeah.
So Haiti qualified for the play-in tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will next year go down to, or later on this year, go down to New Zealand and be one of 10 teams competing for a couple of spots at the end of this 32 team World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, nobody actually wants to play the Haitians.
Yeah, this will give them some. They can go, okay, wow, we can really do something. I mean, get Wycliffe Jean to throw some money out, and they might be able to really compete.
You talked about the support and the stability. They have a coach that came in who has a lot of connections in the French women's professional league, which is one of the best in the world. So he has been able to get a number of his team contracts over in France, and they saw the benefits of that this year, right? So it came into, you have a Haitian team that about half of them play lower table first division French women's league, upper table second division French women's team, versus a Jamaica team that has the bulk of their players playing in NWSL, D1 college soccer, and then the likes of Bunny Shaw, who is plays for Man City. She's just like on a different level, right? And I think it came down to a little bit of that, but Haiti has a very, 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 very legitimate chance of, if they can go down there, if they can organize themselves, if they can do all that stuff, they have, on the strength of what I saw this summer, they have a very legitimate shot of being able to compete with the other women's teams down there and be in the Women's World Cup next summer in New Zealand and Australia. Before I get to my retort to what Stead said, Matt, I want to get your impressions of the USA women in this final against Canada and in the tournament as a whole.
Got to be honest, much like Stead, I didn't watch much of this tournament at all. I did catch the final. All I can say is same thing that Stead hinted at. What little I saw, I was extremely impressed with Haiti. In terms of the U.S. women's team in general, if you're a fan, you have to be happy in so much that this is very much a young team. This is a team in transition. And I think winning this particular tournament, because we are so dominant, should not come as a shock. But in terms of getting these younger players valuable minutes, getting them, meaningful minutes, and giving them a chance to win something. I'm a big believer in the whole winning is contagious mentality. I think this is good. But the one issue with this tournament, and hopefully it is changing with the likes of, Canada getting better, maybe some of the Caribbean teams, because the United States is such the hegemon in this particular confederation. Really, up until the final, I didn't have very much interest in tuning in very much, and that's just unfortunate. Now, again, maybe slowly but surely, this is changing. We're seeing signs of this, but no, I think you have to be impressed. And as you said, with the goals allowed, look, this team looks defensively solid. Put them against the European teams, I'm not so sure, but we'll see.
one of the reasons why I tuned in was I knew that this was a team in transition and that I wanted to see what am I looking at in advance of next summer. Because whether or not you chose to tune into this, and I can quibble with CONCACAF's version of game times a different time. I've already made it very clear. I do not favor starting games at 10 o'clock Eastern time for a number of reasons, right? I don't think that's, and I damn sure don't favor putting US games on at 10 o'clock Eastern. Like, I don't see the point in doing that, right? But that's a CONCACAF thing. That's what they decided to do.
By the way, that's not just a women's thing. We've seen this in the Gold Cup.
No, and that was not, and I didn't say that was a women's thing. I said that's a CONCACAF thing. That's men's, women's. They could be playing aliens and they'd still start games at 10 o'clock. That's a CONCACAF thing. And I have no idea why they do that. And I have a lot of problems with that. And I made my opinion on that subject known many times on this podcast. And clearly they don't listen to me because who the hell does? But I wanted to see what we had. I knew that after the Olympics in Tokyo, that we were going to, the U.S. women were going to go under a wholesale change. Vlatko Andonovski needed to get rid of the last vestiges of Jill Elliot's team, get his players in and put his stamp on. And that's what he's done. And he's had 18 months to 2 years to bring in new players. He blooded them and we saw them. Was it the perfect specimen? Not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. The finishing overall left a lot to be desired. There are some issues at the back. We still have a question as to who should actually be starting in goal. I can easily say there are some veteran players who are still eligible physically, who I might say put in because I'm not sold on the player you brought in, Julie Ertz again. We're missing something. I think Megan Rapinoe, even at her advanced age, still her delivery from the wings and her ability to deliver from set pieces is still a critical component, even though she didn't play most of the tournament. I think she played one game. So there's still that aspect, but it was nice to start to see some of these players. And Matt said what I came up with was, 1 through 23. And I think this is the key. 1 through 23, the U.S. women are still so incredibly deep. We may not have the best top 5 players on the team. You could go odds and ends and say, there are better players at this position and say, all right, so 7 out of 11, 5 out of 11, 6 out of 11. But the one thing you cannot deny about the U.S. women is that their bench, 12 through 23, is where the depth is. And that is what no other team has. And as long as we have that advantage, that is why we will be favored in these games. You can almost put an entire second 11 out for certain games, rest players and keep them fresh. And that was where it showed in this final, was because Andonovski was able to rotate so much through the group stages, the court in the semis. The number of minutes played on average for the U.S. women was a fraction.
Yeah,
of
I saw that stat and I was like, this speaks just to, well, there's two things it speaks to. It speaks to the genuine quality of depth that the U.S. women's team has. But it does sort of go back to what I and sort of Stead was saying. They could almost sleepwalk through some of these group stage matches. They really can.
And I think the thing is still, there's a top and there's a bottom. I think the big issue with women's soccer is the in between, and that's what's not there yet.
And particularly in CONCACAF, because I mean, it's sort of weird being fans of the men's game. We expect Mexico to be always right there. But the truth of the matter is, in the women's game, the sport has come late to a lot of the, Central American Spanish speaking nations, like to the point that Canada, some of the Anglophone countries in the Caribbean have like a little bit of a head start, which is strange.
But the Mexicans, I will say, are extremely upset at the performance of the Mexican women in this particular tournament.
But that's their fault. I'm sorry, that's their fault. They have ample resources and ample knowledge and history there to be able to, basically they relate to the party. They didn't think it was very important and they didn't put any time and effort into it. And now they're seeing that, wow, we're getting thumped by countries that have not nearly the footballing history or prowess that Mexico has, or just general athletic history as Mexico has. This country has hosted the World Cup twice, and this is the product you're putting out. I'm sorry, Mexico, this is your fault. This is your fault. You did not invest in your women properly. You didn't. And now this is what's happening. You didn't do it. And this same thing happened in Brazil. This same thing happened in Brazil, because don't forget, I believe it was in the 2014 tournament. The starting goalkeeper for the Brazilian national team was a volleyball player who started playing football 3 months before the tournament started. And they were all riding on the coattails of probably the greatest women's player ever, Marta. But not actually putting in any real investment in their game. And now Brazil's also playing catch up when they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. But
Brazil has become, as a result of that.
Oh, absolutely. And I expect the same from Mexico.
Brazil has become one of the. I think the stratification in CONMEBOL is a little more stark than it is in CONCACAF, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying that we saw this similar thing occur. Granted, it was 8 years ago, but a dominant country in their confederation, wasn't really performing the way they should, and it's the same thing happening in Mexico. Now, again, had you been paying attention 8 years ago and said, we don't want this to happen to us, as you should have, and you didn't. But I'll say this too: Brazilian women also have plenty of other games that they're really interested in. Handball, netball being some of them, especially handball and volleyball. They're excellent volleyball players down there. So it's just more of like hey, this is our game, and we got to be good at this with men and women. And the same, Mexico needs to do the same thing.
We did have a Brazilian lined up for tonight, but he was unable to make it. We'll hope to welcome him on next week. Mm-hmm. I was going to talk to him about CONMEBOL, which is basically a two-team tournament. It's either in one group you have Brazil, who are so far out in front, and you have in the other group Colombia. I think the learning lesson for this is actually going to be Argentina, who have a very rich, proud soccer history and had to watch their women's team get absolutely thumped by Brazil, which is never a good thing if you're a Brazilian. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that they will put the investment. They will put the money in. Right, but if
Messi to write a check, Messi and Di Maria could do the whole thing on their own.
Yeah, and there's no reason why they shouldn't.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Brazil since 2014, when it was basically Marta and the 10 other people on
Mhm.
the pitch, has become a legitimately competitive women's team.
Mhm.
Colombia has become a legitimately competitive
Mhm.
women's team.
Yeah.
But this is the question, right? And when we look at CONCACAF qualifying for the Olympics and in the World Cup, let's take the World Cup most especially. We typically look at it as, until this year, being a two-team race. It's the U.S. and it's Mexico. It's the U.S. and Mexico and whoever else comes along. It is more of a shock that the U.S. didn't qualify than what Panama did. Now, I will say, in the CONCACAF women's tournament, yes, it is a situation where there are basically two teams right now that you look at that can win it. The U.S. and Canada. But the one thing that you can say that about those teams that you cannot say about the men's teams is either one of those women's teams are a serious contender to win the World Cup. Canada's proven it. They've won a gold medal. They have the one from Tokyo. They've won an international tournament. Yes, the women are the two-time defending women's World Cup champions. There is only one thing left in women's soccer that the U.S. women haven't done, and that is to back up a World Cup with a gold medal to win both the premier tournaments in consecutive years. It's the only thing that they haven't done. But you have in these two teams, they are legit threats. I mean, if you go in next year, when we look at the 32 teams in the Women's World Cup, and we're going to say these are the teams that could win it, I guarantee you both the U.S. and Canada are among. You'll have it. And I will say, yes, that stratification is not the best, but we have produced two world-class women's teams by nature of the NWSL and some other things that has brought Jamaica up to the point where they're going to qualify. And now we can actually see Haiti. So I think we just need to watch it and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I tend to. I wish that the Olympics wasn't such a big deal for women's soccer, and primarily because of the sheer limits on qualification.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really odd that I mean, when you really see what Olympics are, and I really didn't think about it until of course, I'm going to go way off kilter here, so just kind of ride with me for a minute. But when the discussions were put in place to remove wrestling from the Olympics for the men, and which of course would affect women's wrestling as well, which has been I think has been very exciting to watch. So I was like, why would you eliminate probably the second oldest sport in the world after simply track, where you just kind of run against each other? Why would you eliminate that from an Olympic Games? So as I was looking into it, I saw how those of us who have done combat sports and grappling, the number of weight classes that you have based on for various people so they can compete, and how limited it is in the Olympics. And I didn't even think about that. There's only 6 weight classes in the Olympics. I believe 6 to 8 on any given Olympic cycle, where I'm going, whoa, you look at the World Championships, there's twice that many. So
in collegiate wrestling, there are 13.
Yeah. So I was like, I was like, wait a minute. So then I started to think about that with the women's game, because I remember we were talking before the last Olympics and how France didn't qualify, even though France is like like one of the greatest teams after, United States and Germany, Sweden, you got France. And I was like, wait a minute, that's tournament is suffering the same thing. They're suffering the same thing. And yet the qualification process, I don't understand it for women's soccer. I don't really get how they qualified. It's my own fault. I haven't really looked into it very deeply, but it's a very limited tournament. It's very limited. And the steps to get there aren't very clear for every confederation. It's different. So to have that be a major thing for the women's game, I don't know. I feel like it's not very fair to the vast majority of the women who suit up and play every week.
I hate the fact that with the women's tournaments, the Olympic rules and the World Cup are different.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
it bothers me.
You had issues with roster size, where for a World Cup, you could have a 21-person roster, but for an Olympics, you might only be able to have 18.
Mm-hmm.
To qualify, but then Olympics qualify via Olympic Federation, not Soccer Confederation.
Right. And you know what? And I do get it from the perspective that, kind of what we're talking about before. Some, if you compare it to the men's game, outside of the Euro and what we're seeing now with CONMEBOL, the confederation tournaments just aren't very competitive. I mean, I know it's the AFCON. Nigeria's won 11 of 13 or something like that. So yes, it's not quite as competitive. But, and I'm not saying they should do a World Cup every 2 years either. But I don't know. I just think the limitations of the Olympics. Like, again, I don't have a solution to this problem. I don't. I'm just pointing out something that I've noticed that I thought, since we're kind of talking a lot about women's soccer today, that I was like, that always kind of bothered me, and I don't have an answer for it, nor do I think they should change it. It just bothers me.
Some uniformity in how you choose qualifiers.
Yeah, I think that would
be a little bit better.
Yeah, because I'd probably pay attention to it a bit more.
CONCACAF decided that CONCACAF gets guaranteed one berth in the Olympic tournament. They said the winner of our CONCACAF W Championship will be will get our automatic berth to the Olympics. The other one has to go through a international qualifying tournament, which involves both CONCACAF and South America, right? Because the Olympics don't play by the same rules as FIFA does. Whereas Europe, who has multiple qualifying places, says, the top two European teams in the World Cup are the one. That's why France didn't qualify the last time out, was because France, I think it's the top three European teams in the World Cup are the ones that qualify. All right, so France in a home World Cup has the bad fortune to end up, despite winning their group, on the same side of the draw as the United States has to face them in the quarters and gets knocked out.
Yes, that's just not right.
It's not even. It's not
right.
even.
I mean,
it's not. Welcome on Chelsea Mike.
Hey, here's Chelsea Mike. Hey, he's here again. Hey.
Yeah.
I think, part of the problem, and I think you could see it from the women's Euros, right? That they're shoveling women into very much smaller stadiums. And now they're selling them out, and they kind of wish they had larger ones. I think
that's something we'll talk about in a second. So,
but I think that there's genuine concern, especially from UEFA's perspective, of being able to fill a stadium to put on a separate tournament to have a qualifier for the Olympics.
But you don't need
after the World Cup.
You don't need to. Just how CONCACAF sat there and said the top 4 will qualify for the World Cup. The top 1 gets our automatic berth. Why can't UEFA say the top 3? Because you're going to play a consolation game at the end of this Euros. They could easily say the top three finishers in the Euros get the automatic spots. They were the ones who sat there and chose the World Cup. They said World Cup. Why do you have it based on a world tournament instead of a continental tournament? I'm not saying host an entirely different tournament for Olympic qualification. You know, you already have one go round for World Cup qualification. You have one go round for Euro qualification. Take the Euros, your top three teams or your top two teams qualify automatically for the World.
Well,
We've got
you know what
berths.
I think. I mean, yeah, no, you're right. They can do something different there, certainly, especially with having the Euros this year. You're right. I think the pandemic had a little bit to do with why the W tournament this year had so much weight. But I think that, you know, part of the reason why they're saying the men's World Cup should be every 2 years, I think the women have an advantage here with the Olympics. You know, having a major tournament with all the major players, you know, more than once a cycle. I think UEFA probably is looking at that and saying, you know, well, let's make this matter for this and that, you know. I don't know, but I think that for the women's game long term, having those two tournaments it's an advantage. I don't think it's any, you know, you guys
but then I would hate that if I was from England. Because think about it, your representation in the Olympics is not England, it's Great Britain.
That's true.
So how does that affect them? And they're what? I think they're semis or they're playing really well in their tournament. So it's like, okay, well, how do they compete in the Olympics then? Because the way their representation is totally different. So you're going to have a hub of the game suddenly have this different sort of representation there. It tells me, like, I'm not disagreeing with you. And as I said, I don't have a solution to the problem, but I do think this is a problem. And the women play a lot of games. They play more international games than men do. So I don't see how they couldn't. If you're playing so many games, you can make them more meaningful because they're already playing these games. They're playing a ton of games. You'll never see a men's player with 300 caps anymore. That's never going to happen again. In fact, seeing a men's player with 100 caps is going to be a rarity. So, but it's pretty common amongst your dominant women's players. It's pretty common for them to have 100 caps, 200 caps. So,
well, for a long time, it was the only way that professional women got to play soccer.
Agreed. So, but they can do it if they wanted to. They could. And you don't necessarily need to get butts and seats for all these games because, you know, Chelsea, Mike, I noticed it too. When the occasion when I have had the game on, it's like there are people there and they're watching and they're cheering. It is being talked about on major sports networks. It's being discussed on podcasts. It's being discussed on regular radio. It's being discussed. So, you know, you have to have the plate in order to serve the dinner. And it sounds like they're trying to figure out, they're trying to determine the size of the plate before they actually even made the dinner. Why don't you make the dinner first? Yeah.
In that analogy, who is they?
They as FIFA.
Okay, so let's accept that FIFA doesn't give 3 or 2 or 1 about women's soccer. If they did, they wouldn't allocate resources. They wouldn't do what they do when it comes to the women's game. The women's game is almost ancillary to them. And yes, that's the backwards misogynist thinking on behalf of FIFA. You know, how could FIFA and UEFA sanction the idea of allowing a women's game to be played at a women's Euro game to be played at the Manchester City training ground, which they set up the whole 4,500. Not only did they set it up the whole 4,500, but the field wasn't up to snuff. They talked about how I don't even have another word to say this, so I'm not making a slur when I say how retarded the field was, because it played so it's slow insofar as you could not put enough weight on the ball to get it to do what you wanted to. It's absolutely abhorrent that they allowed UEFA and they allowed England to say, this is our plan to host this game. When there are that many, okay, so you don't want to do Old Trafford. You don't have to. You want to have games in Manchester? Do you know how many stadiums there are of appropriate sizes in between the Manchester City training ground, which, by the way, holds over 7,000, but they sanctioned at 45 for the Women's Euros. Do you know how many different stadium sizes there are in between that and Old Trafford?
Dude, go to Vitality in Bournemouth. That's a great little stadium. It's a great atmosphere. And it's on the South Coast. It'd be great. It'd be a great place to watch a game.
No, I'm just saying in Manchester, where you wanted to have the game.
Alone, yeah.
Right, you could have had the University of Manchester Stadium. I'm pretty sure Wigan's up there. Any one of those stadiums you could have had games in.
Listen to me. I will tell you exactly why. I will tell you exactly why. I mean,
because
it might not
they don't
be the
care.
No, but I mean, it might not be the answer, but this is why. Because every weekend out trots the Women's Super League. And I think, again, I've said it a couple times throughout the women's process, that the English league is the most competitive in the world. It's got 4 or 5 top teams.
We can argue about that one later.
All right, fair enough. But those Women's Super League games are played in training ground stadiums. The Chelsea women's team, which has Sam Kerr, arguably the best women's player in the world, as depicted this week on the FIFA 2023 cover. Sam Kerr, Pernille Harder, Beth England, all these players who are playing every week. Where do they play? They play at Cobham Stadium, Chelsea's training ground. And if you're organizing a tournament and you're not really certain about what kind of numbers are going to show up to an event, well, then it makes sense to have the Manchester area represented by the ground where the women's teams actually play. And these are where these women play every week in the Women's Super League. And and this tournament, the Euro tournament, is going to be great. It's going to grow the women's game. But the organizers of this tournament did not know this. And, they took
Mike, I'm calling BS on this simply for this fact. The World Cup is coming to the US in 2026. We in the US regularly play men's games in stadiums that top out at capacity of about 20,000. Using your logic, we should be scheduling men's World Cup games.
No, because the World Cup is going to attract 70,000 people. The UEFA Women's Euro 2022 organizers could not have known. And I'm not defending.
With the same evidence that tells you that the men's World Cup is going to attract 70,000, that the men's World Cup can't be held in a stadium that tops out at 20,000 capacity. The same evidence from previous Euros and previous Women's World Cup will tell you that you can get a stadium full of more than 4,500, right? I'm not saying that you need to put it in Old Trafford with a capacity of 80 some odd thousand, or even the City Ground, Etihad, which has a capacity of upwards of 55, 60, right? I'm saying that 4,500 is a doggone insult. And the same evidence that you're citing as to why we are not going to host a World Cup game at Audi Field, nor will we put a CONCACAF Gold Cup game of any consequence at Subaru Park in Philly, is the same evidence that tells me that you can host a women's Euro game at a stadium that hosts more than 45,000, right? Or 4,500. But who cares? Yes, this is what you do week in, week out in the league. Week in, week out in the MLS, we host games in stadiums that hold 18 to 20,000. When it comes to major international tournaments, we don't. When it comes to CONMEBOL Centenario, we don't. When it comes to the Gold Cup, we don't. When it comes to the Gold Cup, they don't play games at Subaru Park in Philadelphia. They play them at Link. Right? So the same evidence that you're talking about tells me that you should know international games are different. They jumped in the pool on this one. They noped out.
Well, you know what? And again, and I'm not defending it. I don't think. Yeah, they should have played at a state. But you know, two things. One, if your choices in the city of Manchester proper, right? Like in the city of Manchester or Old Trafford, Etihad, and
none of them are in the city of Manchester. So again, your choices in the city. The stadium in London, I believe, is Brentford.
Yeah, right? But I mean,
you could.
No, I know, but Brentford Stadium is like Subaru Park down in Philly. It's like 20,000 people. I'm saying there might not have been an option. What's that?
Selhurst Park. Craven Cottage. All of those are actually in London proper and have.
So is Brentford. Brentford's in the city of London.
It's like Subaru.
Brentford is the closest stadium to Stamford Bridge.
That's not actually in the city of London.
It is in the city of London.
Okay, it's the closest stadium to Stamford Bridge. But again, you could have them in Selhurst Park. You could have them in Craven Cottage. And even Brentford Stadium with a capacity of what, 25, 27,000?
Yeah, no, but I'm saying that
is not 4,500.
No, I know, but so Manchester is different. They want to represent all the regions of England when they're hosting the tournament. And so in the city of Manchester itself, their options might have only been, I mean, there's Manchester FC. I'm sure their ground isn't bigger than 4,500 people because they're in like tier 8 or whatever. But if your choices are the Etihad, Old Trafford, and this ground.
All right, as far as what's in the actual city of Manchester, Old Trafford's not. All right, we know Old Trafford's outside. It's in the greater Manchester area, which also includes Ealing Road and Leeds, which includes.
No, Leeds is definitely not in the Manchester.
Well, okay, let's Yorkshire.
No, there's Wolverhampton, but Wolverhampton is not Manchester. That they're different places, but they're like 5 miles away from each other.
You could have done it. You could have done it. All right, I'm sorry. You could have done it.
Well,
You know,
Wigan's technically in Greater Manchester. What's the capacity?
so is Bolton.
I know,
So is
but
Bolton.
you ask anybody from the city of Manchester. Yeah, they're in some geopolitical area or whatever, but they're definitely not in Manchester. I mean, it's that kind of attitude. It would be like, well, you know what? It would be like if we finally stopped considering the Meadowlands in New York, because it's not.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
So,
But the end of the question, like, look, the major cricket ground in Manchester is Old Trafford, which is by Old Trafford. That is not in Manchester, the city proper. They will go down there and watch by the 55,000. I am not saying that you have to have it in the Etihad or something like that. You need to do better than trying to justify. Mike, there is literally no justification for having it in 45, a 7,000 seat arena and cutting that down to 4,500. That was insulting. That was bad. That was a bad look. It played bad on TV. It played bad with the women. It was a show of negligence. And the sooner that we can stop defending UEFA and FIFA and stop saying, well, okay, well, they had to do it because this was the option that they had. No, you had other options. You just didn't really look at them.
Well, look, I just want to wrap and say this, because I know we have to move on, but I'm saying it's a good thing. We've outperformed that. The women's game is outperforming their organizers' expectations. I think it shows growth of women's soccer. All right, if their choice was bad, okay, but they're selling more tickets than they thought they were going to.
No, it's not. That's actually, I don't agree with that at all. Chelsea, Mike, I have to agree with you there. I mean, the fact that they thought that was going to happen and it didn't, that's positive for women's soccer. It shows that they outkicked UEFA's coverage. My only issue with this is the fact that even if those games were in bigger stadiums, I don't think they'd be filled to capacity. I think they would definitely fall short. Who is this being marketed to? Because I'm sorry, we're 4 guys talking about this women's tournament, and I can honestly tell you that I seriously doubt we have watched it to the extent that that probably we should have to be able to discuss it at length as we are. That's my one thing. My other thing, though, is, like, think of it this way. I'm still frustrated with the fact that these stadiums are these games being marketed to the people who should be attending them, which are primarily women and girls. This is the women's game. This is the women's game. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be marketed to only men, but are they pushing to get interest amongst those young girls who play to come to these games? Are they really doing that?
I think they need to be marketing it to fans, right? And
okay, but you need to market to new fans. That's the problem. That's why nobody's at the games. Market it to new fans who should primarily be women for the women's game.
Women, men don't.
Because if we're going to get on the thing with equal, look, I'm not. Look, we've talked about equal pay, equal representation, equal equal everything. Okay, great. Then you need to equal your marketing, because you got to get equal number of butts in seats. And so let's make sure you're marketing to new fans who are going to come to the game, which should primarily be young women and girls who play this game just as competitively and just as passionately as boys and men.
I slightly disagree insofar as I think you market it as a game to fans and say, come out and watch this. It's quality. You are still watching a Italian national team. You're still watching a Belgian national team. You know what? One of the best things that I saw this entire Women's Euros was, Stead? The Belgian national team's banned. by
They are
far
good.
the greatest thing that I have seen. I mean, I love it. I'm not being. It is like what five is two trumpet players, a trombone, a tuba player, a clarinet player, and a drummer sitting, and they are playing like Sweet Caroline with the best of them. By far, the best thing that I have seen this entire tournament. And probably the best thing that I would have seen in a men's tournament, because I just love that they're sitting there and they are playing their hearts out. It was flipping amazing. If you want to know why Italy didn't go to the quarterfinals, it's because they didn't have a band as good as Belgium did.
No, let me say no, but let me say this. You guys are both right? Like
I know
this is
I
an
am. You don't
opportunity.
need to tell me that.
Well, this is an
He's right even when he knows he
opportunity.
isn't.
This is an opportunity for UEFA to make soccer a game for more than blokes, right?
Mhm.
More than the
That's
punters
my
and
point.
you
That's
know.
my point.
But
That's
this is
exactly.
this goes back to a conversation that we have had.
No. But
our-
wait, let me finish. Because
I really
you're
don't
also
want to.
No,
you're
let him
also
finish. Let him
right.
finish.
Mike. You're also right. But bring the blokes along.
Mhm.
You know, it's a great game. It's good to watch. Like, so don't stop at making the women's game just for women. Bring the blokes along too.
Hey, look, we all know this. I'm going to say something here. You know, I'm not teaching currently, so I'm going to say this. Look, we all know if the ladies go somewhere, the dudes are going to follow. That's why they have ladies' nights and not dudes' nights. So, yes, if they go, we will go. Absolutely. If my wife and my daughter say, I'd love to go to an NWSL game, I will buy them tickets and I will take them immediately. And if I tell my son when he gets older, it's going to be a lot of, you know.
No,
he's going to want to go to.
I think there is something a little bit more than that, which is this. We have had this conversation amongst the larger group of us. Would you buy a men's version of a women's soccer jersey? Would you wear an Alex Morgan jersey? Would you wear a Megan Rapinoe jersey? Would you, Chelsea Mike, wear a Sam Kerr jersey?
Yes, and I am buying one tomorrow. I'm buying the yellow third jersey of Chelsea with Sam Kerr on it. Yes, I'm doing that tomorrow. I am.
No, but
You caught me on the right night.
The women's
And I'll
version,
wear it on here.
No, you don't have to. Would you wear? Would you at this point wear a U.S. women's national team jersey? Would you wear a Arsenal women's jersey? Would Matt a Liverpool women's jersey? You know, like represent those teams.
U.S. national team, definitely. You know why? Because they win. I'd wear an Alex Morgan. Well, no, I'd wear a Christian Pulisic jersey, but I'd wear if I had two jerseys, one would be Christian Pulisic and one would be Alex Morgan.
I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, I would wear the women's jersey, but I would not have a name on it. I don't do that for men's jerseys either. I don't like wearing another dude's name on my back. It feels weird to me. So just give me the actual. I'd wear the plain one, but I wouldn't wear one with the name on it. But I don't do that for any team. I only wear jerseys.
All right, so you just don't you wear blanks.
I just wear blank jerseys. Absolutely.
I tend to have names on the back of mine as a show of respect, and I legit thought about it and was like, all right, Alex Morgan, Carly Lloyd, and Trinity Robinson were the three I came up with just for my various own personal reasons. Those were the three that I came up with, but I could go out and see getting a 4-star USA women's jersey, going into a game and repping and having an Alex Morgan jersey or a Trinity Robinson jersey, just because, you know, I love Dennis. Carly Lloyd, the Del Rand thing. But I could see doing that. Now, the fact that I can sit here now and say, it tells you how effectively we have marketed the game to, as Mike said, blokes. It's possible. It's possible. You don't have to focus. If you sit there and say, okay, I understand what you're saying, Stead, saying focusing a marketing campaign on women and children. I just don't want women's soccer to sell itself short and say you can't get guys. You can't get guys who are soccer fans to go out and watch this, because I have decided I am going to watch this tournament and found it to be very interesting.
Yeah,
very
I don't think the confederations have done enough to even sell it at all.
Definitely not.
At all.
Yeah.
No,
So,
definitely not.
You have to sell it in the first place. They're not selling it at all. At all.
Yeah,
I have not seen
and
a single advertisement for any of these games on TV. Not one. Not one. I hear about it I hear about it after the fact, people talking about it who are already interested in the game. But I'm not seeing this being marketed. I'm not. And I'm sorry.
And
Most
right.
fans,
No, you're right.
Fans are casual fans. Most fans are not going to be paying attention the way four guys who are going to talk about this for 2 hours on a Tuesday are going to. They're not.
All right, and that, okay, again, you're proving my point.
Market the game.
Market the game. But this is
Like
we didn't even
we're splitting hairs.
get off
here.
your we're splitting hairs because
here. We are. And the minutia is getting a little long. We're splitting hairs because we're both saying the same thing. We're both saying the same thing. I'm saying
do something.
Focus. Yes, we're both saying do something. You're saying do something on a much more broader perspective than I am, but we're both saying do something. We're both saying do something. And that's the most important thing.
No, and if we're going to say like they haven't done it, yes, they have all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
All the way around. UEFA, CONCACAF, all of them have done a disservice in the marketing and the presentation of these games. I've said this before. You should never have a single person booth for a soccer game, which the CONCACAF Women's W Championship had. You should never, CBS Paramount, have a single person booth, right? You should never send somebody out to broadcast and do play-by-play and analysis on their own. There should never be an occasion where you are broadcasting with a single person booth.
I agree with you, but again, Mike, in the women's game, when I watch Chelsea play in the WSL, it's only ever a one-person booth. And again, you're right. It's all about investment in the game. It's all about believing.
Don't justify it.
I'm not
He's
justifying.
not justifying it.
This
He's
is
explaining.
these are the
Let him
conditions.
explain.
Yeah,
No, but
this is-
I hear what he's saying. But he's saying like,
I know,
okay,
but you're going at him like he's the one that's made the decision.
No,
I'm not.
this is.
the one
I'm
that's
just
making
saying. I'm
these
just telling you,
decisions.
this is the state of the women's game. This is what
I know
the convention is.
Y'all think
All right.
I don't know this? Y'all
Move
think
on.
I don't
Next
know
topic.
this?
Next topic. Move on.
That
Let's
was all we had.
go. No, it's not. We can talk about something else.
Kevin's
all we
talking
had.
about results, right?
Look, we threw some love at Haiti, right? Let's throw some love at Morocco.
All right, let's also throw some love.
Let's just throw some love at Morocco.
All right,
Morocco has yet to qualify for anything, and they qualify for AFCON this time as a host, and they knocked out the greatest African women's team of Nigeria, and they qualified for the final. So you're going to get a first-time AFCON champion, because only two countries have ever won, of Morocco or South Africa. Hey, that's pretty cool, right?
I really didn't realize that that CAF was doing the women's. I really did not.
It was crazy. It was over the weekend, and beIN Sports, I think it was beIN Sports, were actually showing
that's
games.
why I didn't know.
And they were showing games live. They weren't delayed. They were live, which they were delaying games for the men's tournament, for the men's AFCON tournament. But they had granted, yes, if you're going to show a live game, for a tournament of that stature, do it during the most dead time of the year in American sports, which is the middle of July, because all we have is midseason baseball, and that's about it. And we all know how exciting that is. So, but it was on, and I was like, oh wow, look, I didn't know there was an AFCON women's tournament going on right now. Nevertheless, that there would be some drama involved. So that was good. So yes, much love for you, Morocco. Go ahead.
Because I don't get BN, I legit did not know. I knew about the CONCACAF W Championship. I knew about the Women's Copa America, and I knew about the Women's Euros. I legit did not know that was happening right now, and that's probably because I didn't do BN.
BN is the bridge too far for me, right? Like I've got Peacock for the Premier League, and I've got ESPN Plus for a lot of stuff, and I've got Paramount Plus for the national games in the Champions League. But yeah, BN, and I know they show a lot of French league games. They show, I think, Liga MX.
I'm of the BN brigade, mainly because they show the Polish league now, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, we're just going to tell Mike to
well, after BN lost La Liga, they've become basically the fringe international tournament telecast right now, because I didn't recognize anybody in the booth. I'm not sure if half people in the booth knew that there was a tournament going on either, Mike. So but I'm upset because I like BN's coverage, and I like the 90 and 30 shows that they would do to give you like you could watch a game in 30 minutes, because sometimes with soccer all you really need is 30 minutes to see everything you needed to see. So but yeah, I feel bad for BN, because I did like their coverage, especially of La Liga. But hey, you want to watch AFCON Women's Tournament, go to BN, it's there. And also their app and their online stuff is terrible. It's so bad. Is it the worst?
Awful.
It's awful.
But
it's awful.
If you're a fan of like your fringy leagues, it's worth the amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, it happened to get thrown in with the new package of cable I bought. They threw it in. I was like, oh, okay, great.
AFCON was coming on, and then I saw that they got the rights to the Polish league, and I'm like, okay, this beats going to a bar in Port Richmond.
Yeah.
I don't know, Matt. I've never had a bad time at a bar in Port Richmond.
That is true, but early on a Saturday morning,
is that near Delran? Is that near Delran, New Jersey?
A bar at Port Richmond, I can get pierogies.
I like pierogies.
Yeah, and you could dance with a couple old Polish ladies after everything's done.
Hey man,
sign me up, man.
Sign me up.
That one of these times I'll tell you a story about the time these two clowns drugged me out to the bar in Port Richmond.
I'm always going to miss the New Wave Cafe.
The New Wave Cafe. Stead. We walked in the restaurant. There were two black things in the entire restaurant: me and the tablecloth.
Oh man, I'm
always going to miss the New Wave Cafe.
How I quite made it out of there alive, I don't know. But you walk in and you're looking around, and I'm like, there are two black things in this entire restaurant: me and the tablecloth. And why was it that our table was the only one that had a black tablecloth on it?
I saw you coming from the parking lot, bro. And they ran out of beige ones.
I'm just saying. Like, but the food was awesome. So was the beer. And if you could deal with Polish music, yeah. It was all good. It was a really great time. Would love to go back. But
sounds like fun.
I agree with you that I wonder how much longer BN can survive.
Yeah, it's concerning. It's concerning. Yeah, it is.
Especially because some of these fringe leagues, like before the RPL became completely irrelevant, they were, rather than fighting for B League, cable packages. They launched their own YouTube site. And for a small subscription, you could get everything.
But we have, I'm not going to lie, broadcast rights are one of the things that I find interesting.
Yeah. Anytime I have a broadcast question, I just like, Mike, what's up with this, man? Please explain it, because I know you've done the research and I know you've done the reading.
But we've also talked about how, with the need for subscription streaming services from larger networks, not read in, like Paramount Plus, like ESPN, like Fox, the need to continue to gobble up those rights, is something like beIN going to be able to continue to hold on to these over in the US if they can no longer even offer a viable cable channel, right? If I am, say, the Scottish League, which is normally the typical one that I go to, why would I want to go to beIN where a fraction of people at this point, only people who subscribe to Verizon or pay the $25 a month to get beIN, where I can also go to ESPN, where I'm going to have a larger reach. Now, I know this is all immaterial because at some point in time, every league is going to end up putting out their own app with their own, like we saw with MLS. They're all just going to get into the production game, stop selling the rights to various networks, and start producing their own, get into the content production game so that they own their own rights entirely. And then they push them out to streamers and cable services, because then all the money coming in, I get. I don't have to worry.
It's an interesting model.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very interesting model.
But
that's something that I hope they continue to pursue, because the you would hope that if they actually had more control, that they would actually try their best to make it a bit more accessible, because you're eliminating the middleman. I'm interested to see what happens with that. I'm not going to poo-poo that, just because it's something that's going to be different than what I'm used to. I have
the MLS model.
The MLS model is. I was wondering if we were going to talk about that or do that at a later show, but the MLS model is.
Let's talk about it.
I think we should. Yeah. Okay. The MLS model. They seem to be holding a lot to their chest as far as what it's going to look like moving forward, especially from a broadcast perspective. Are there going to be? The recently I heard of just about how the local affiliates and local broadcasters they don't know if they're going to be utilized or not in the upcoming with the upcoming new broadcast deal that they have. All signs point towards no, but they haven't been told yet. So
they were told 2 years ago.
Yeah, but it hasn't been made like official as far as what the plan is going to be moving forward, as far as how it's going to look from the fan perspective. Is it going to be, because look, we saw during COVID that you're going to have broadcasters who are going to be calling games and they won't even be in the same state. They could be totally in just some hub somewhere with a screen and could be broadcasting that way. So that's entirely possible.
Right,
the technology is good enough for them to do it.
What he's saying, Mike, is they know that they're out for broadcasting, but they don't know if they're going to be in charge of production and get paid, rather than the big money they used to get, just kind of like what consultant fees or whatever, to get the guys to hold the cameras.
I think if it makes the games more accessible, though, sorry.
No. So here, I will tell you this. I myself am delighted about this change, because the regional broadcaster for my Philadelphia Union is WPHL 17, which we don't get up here 2 hours away as I am from Philly. we don't get it. They're an independent broadcaster that's not affiliated with a major network, or they do My Network TV or whatever, but
You're in that dead zone.
yeah, no. So there's no, like, even if I download the app, my cable company doesn't have it. We don't get PHL 17. So even though I'm in the Philadelphia broadcast area, I don't get PHL 17. So I don't get to see most Union games on TV. And so, yeah, I'm frankly delighted about this choice, because being in an extended area, I now have access to watch more games. And and if there's a small fee for that, well, there's a small fee for everything.
There are a couple of things here. Number one, we have learned, by and large, people don't consume sports regionally like they might have back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you have a lot more
choices.
There's too many choices. People move around more than they used to. The broadcast reach doesn't.
Media has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so people don't have the same regional ties that they used to. I'm going to commend MLS for reaching out and putting a stake in the ground and doing something that no other league in the United States has done, to say that we are going to completely centralize broadcasting. We're going to get into the production game like no other league has, which is why I kind of push back on the local broadcasters thing. MLS is saying that they are going to be in charge of producing games. And the reason why they're going to do this is because they want uniformity across all broadcasts. They want to ensure that when you watch a game produced at Subaru Park, it looks the same as a game produced at CenturyLink, right? And us as MLS fans, I can tell the difference when ESPN has a game versus when PHL 17 has. Camera angles, broadcasting, that whole thing.
Or even between individual regional broadcasters, because I go on my folks in the New York area, it's remarkably different from, let's say, a Red Bulls match versus.
So they want uniformity across all games. All right. That's why I think like their broadcasting networks, maybe they might use the camera guys, but I don't think so, because they're going to go out and they're going to hire their teams. They want to centralize and control everything. Everything that you've read about MLS in this gig is about control over the aesthetics of this, which is good, right? Yeah, uniformity across all productions. The other issue that they've had is that they want to make sure all of their commentators are on brand. That's what bothers me the most, is we others have at times been a little bit critical of MLS. They want to make sure that all of their commentary and production is on brand.
Well, yes. So for one thing, what you're talking about is a very European model, right? That's what the Premier League does. That's when you see World Cup games this fall, right? You're going to see the World Cup feed controlled by FIFA Productions. So in that way, it's kind of a tried and true worldwide soccer model. But I agree with you this. If it means less JP Della Camera and more Taylor Twellman, I'm going to be pissed about that.
That's right. Great. And I agree 100,000%. 100,000%.
I know one of the guys who does local play-by-play for Atlanta United. And he's in this situation where, am I going to continue to do this? Probably not, because what you're going to do is you're going to have teams that are going to broadcast. So the idea of JP Kelly Camera and Taylor Twellman broadcasting union games and only broadcasting union games is going to be done. Think more Fox NFL, where Troy Aikman and then move around from game to game to game. Instead, going back to what you were saying about, we are all used to, but we all should be used to. A lot of games that we have watched in soccer over the years have been broadcast from studio, especially when it comes to the Champions League.
Mm-hmm. I didn't say it was a bad thing. Yeah.
No, but don't point that out and saying like this is something that they're going to do. Oh, like this is no. Like,
I wasn't just doing that. I think you're reading into what I was saying.
Yeah, for years and years and years, all the time that ESPN had the Champions League, they did all the group stages up until the semifinals from studio in Bristol. Never sent anybody over to Europe until the semifinals and the finals. The Baltimore Orioles and the Washington Nationals are still doing that because Masson refuses to send people to away games. Not unheard of. I do like it because if this works, it is going to set a benchmark. The NFL is already looking at what MLS did and saying, how can we do this? And if you can put together a subscription model, and I've said to you, I don't know if I'm going to pay over the top for a MLS subscription, but we've heard the NFL recently say they're not going to do DirecTV Sunday Ticket.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I don't know, brother.
No, I'm glad.
I'm
glad it's not on DirecTV.
Right.
That's what I'm happy about.
No,
I'm sorry.
I've
had DirecTV. I'm not a big fan of them.
No, I wasn't trying to say, when you said good, I wasn't trying to say I don't know if that's good. What I was going to say is I have said I don't know if I want to pay the freight for an MLS Plus subscription on Apple.
Yeah.
But I don't know, brother. I don't know if it's like $6, $7, $8 for a Sunday NFL ticket subscription. That means that I get to watch my Birds play 17 weeks of the year guaranteed.
Go Birds.
Brother, I got to think of that.
Yeah. I think it all boils down to as far as MLS is concerned, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah.
I mean, how much is it going to cost?
I have three
Apple TVs, so it's not difficult for me to be able to watch the games. But it's how much does it cost? That's really the bottom line. If they come out and say you can watch an MLS season for $69.99, and I only watch 5 games, I would pay for that though. I'd pay for that.
I would think.
I take a long think about it. I take a long thought.
You're gonna watch the playoffs.
Yeah.
You're.
But I don't watch I hear more about MLS on the radio, and I know what's happening from the radio infinitely more than I get from television, simply because it's what you're saying. I don't really know when it's on. And ours is NBC Sports Washington, which is a channel that seems to switch every now and then. That to the number on the that you have to select seems to change every now and then. So again, it's much more difficult to keep up with it. Where if I knew I had a button when I turned on my Apple TV and it was like MLS and I clicked it and boom, I could watch a game, I would be more interested in watching, LAFC versus LA Galaxy. Yeah, I'd watch that. I would watch New York against New York. I would watch. I mean, they were talking about the whole Portland. Yeah, Seattle Portland. But then now there's this whole little Texas rivalry going on where you have Austin FC is now like the Texas champions over Houston and Dallas. So, yeah, I'd be more interested in watching those things simply because it's easy to access. It's easy to watch. It's not easy to watch now. So, yeah, I'm game. I'm game. If I knew I could do that, yeah, I would.
I'm gonna throw one last one at you. If you're Apple, if you're Paramount, if you're NBC, and you have started to acquire all these rights, you have Premier League rights, you have Champions League rights, you have NFL rights, you have MLB rights. How much would you be willing to pay per year or month? You tell me. For a subscription service that allows you to pick and choose, but guarantees you that you can watch all the games of the teams that you want to watch.
That's interesting.
I'll tell you this. Here's what I would pay for baseball, football, and soccer. I would pay probably like $400 a year for the three of them, and I would figure out hockey and basketball.
But that works out to less than. Are we at $1,200, $12 a month if you're paying 480? 480.
If you're paying $400
That's
a month,
40,
you're
40.
over. It's like 35
40.
bucks. 35 bucks a month.
35, 40.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, even $40 a month, 480. Yeah, 40 bucks a month. I'd say I would pay for all of
per league or total.
for those three.
It is one subscription.
That's a good question.
And it guarantees you, like for me, we know what my teams are. It guarantees me I can watch every Manchester United game, every Philadelphia Union game, every Flyers, Sixers, Eagles, Phils, Yanks game that I want.
For every single sport, I would pay 50.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably close to what I'm paying now.
I was going to say, because I don't think that's much more than I'm currently paying. I really don't. And, I think it depends on too, like, Mike, you talked about, picking and choosing your games. I mean, what I love about Sunday Ticket is I don't have to watch my team. I can watch, because sadly being brought up as a DC sports fan, oftentimes the teams that I support just aren't very good. And it's just something about being this
your team picked a new name and it's not very good.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's bankruptcy in that organization.
Name. It's the worst name. But even like the basketball team's no good. The soccer team is an actual laughing stock. I mean, the way that team is run could not be more poor. And if they really think that Rooney's going to come in and just be the knight in shining armor and be able to turn this club around by himself, they're going to be sorely disappointed. Whoever is running, the people running this club have to just go or take a long look at themselves in the mirror and admit that we don't care if we win, because they seem to not care.
Did you know who the owners of DC United are?
Yeah, I know who they are.
And apparently they're related to the Glazers.
Yeah. Well, tell the Glazers to show them how to run a football club, because say what you want about Manchester United, they under the Glazers' leadership, they have been good at some point.
Stead, you don't understand. DC United heard that Wayne Rooney picked up the wage bill for Derby in April, and they were like, "Oh yeah, come on in,
right?
Yeah, you got 1 month a year, right?
Exactly.
You can just pay."
All right, gentlemen, but get back. The point being.
But yeah, I'd pay it though. But just to answer your question, Mike, I think I'm of this. I would actually pay if I had access to MLS games and as well as NFL football. And I mean, sadly, the sport that I spend the most on is mixed martial arts. So I know that wouldn't be included in any sort of package here. But yeah, I would pay, about comparable fees. I mean, of course, that would cut down on me paying for 2 pay-per-views a year that they've raised to $74.99 for MMA, but at least for UFC. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I would pay it.
I think that's the thing that's going to come. Is as we get into this streaming, what you're eventually going to have is what we're going to do is start coalescing the streaming rights, and then we'll allow you all the reason why I specified teams is it would you'd have to pay more if you wanted to watch every game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would I give you access at $60, which is what Mike said that he would pay to watch all of his teams play, to watch every game in every league?
Mm-hmm. I only brought that up because you can do that with the
$60.
NFL. You can do
$60 would be a great deal.
That's what Sunday Ticket is.
$60 would be a great deal for me if it's you can watch all the games but pick one team, right? Because I'm a Union, I'm a Flyers, I'm a Phillies, I'm an Eagles, but I'm also a Celtics fan. So like that little degree of choice would give me more games that I'd want.
But and that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, for $75, I'll let you pick. $75 a month, I'll let you pick all the games.
But
that
now
you
we're
want
getting up there, though.
But Mike, what you're sort of saying is like an a la carte personalized
for one team. But if you want to watch all the games in the Premier League, all the games in the NHL, all the games in Major League Baseball, well, that's going to cost you more.
I'll tell you this. I would rather be able to watch, my team play, and of course have some a la carte options for some other games, if they had a really, really solid level of production where they offered you a studio show as well as a weekly highlights package or something of that nature, where I can go, okay, I'm going to get a 15-minute highlight package from this game. I'm going to get a 15-minute highlight package of this game. And it's going to be it basically what Paramount has done with Champions League, where you can get a 10-minute kind of wrap up of Champions League. I hope they offer those things, and it's not simply you can watch your game and 5 other games, and that's about it, or the games that we select for you, because these are maybe the more major games that are happening, and not offer you some level of production, some level of studio show. Because look, you're not going to get the information about the league in itself if you're only focused on your team. You're not going to know, to the extent that you would like to know, what's going on throughout the league without some sort of show. And it'd be great if MLS would offer you that as part of the package that they're giving you with their Apple TV subscription. I would really appreciate that.
Well,
listen to me, but that goes to a very, very fundamental issue, right? And that's about all of that production and who does that. And the reason these leagues aren't offering these direct packages right now is
probably when you watch League One Championship on ESPN on halftime, they show the same 5 highlights for 15, 20 minutes, and you get nobody talking. You're just sitting there. Yeah.
Well, no, I know. Yes, lower league football.
I know. That's why I brought you're the lower league guy. But I know you know all too well.
But I mean, you want to talk about one-man booths and being, that being degrading to the athletes who are out there. Like, good luck watching a lower league football game with more than one person.
I hope MLS doesn't do that.
Hope they don't. But this is what I'm saying is the production and distribution power of ESPN right now is what keeps those leagues from doing that, from offering it direct. Because listen, the NHL left ESPN and went to NBC, and you didn't hear word one about NHL on SportsCenter ever. It was gone for 20 years. And that's what they're going to do to you.
Yeah.
If you cut them out.
Yeah.
And you don't get the Sports Center, you don't get the highlights, you don't get them promoting you on their other shows. Like this year, now that they have the NHL rights, during the NBA final or the NBA playoffs, they were promoting the NHL playoffs and vice versa. Like, that's how they do it. They've got their hands in every little business of all the 4 and 5 major sports in North America, and cutting them out. Let's see a couple years from now if you ever hear about the MLS on SportsCenter, because you're not going to, because that's what they do. That's their power.
The other thing is, I think, okay, so SportsCenter and that have kind of they're not the cultural icons that they used to be
No, they're not.
Right.
even
Yeah.
20 years ago.
No,
Yeah.
and
All right,
and
definitely.
one day it will get to the point where all these leagues can eventually be free of that. But right now, they can't.
Hey, look, the Premier League is doing fine without ESPN's top 10 blessing. They have the women's Euros, and you can't consistently get a highlight from them in there. So they're doing fine. All right.
All my lower league football is on ESPN,
and they
like
get there.
the breadth
All right.
and depth of what they have is amazing.
But again, going back to what my original topic was, as I start to wrap this up, MLS getting into the production game, they're going to have to spend money to get into. So that amount of money that they're going to have to do all the things that you said, to go out and produce these 11 games per week, or I'm sorry, I think 15 games per week. It's a 30-team league. Produce 15 games a week. Produce Stead's highlight package. Oh, by the way, that was my phone. That was Uncle Leo calling.
I'm like, is that mine? Where's
All of
my
us are
phone?
looking. Tell Uncle Leo the show will be up tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll call him back. That was Uncle Leo. Yes, you heard my phone vibrating through the mic. That was Uncle Leo calling me. I don't know why Uncle Leo was calling me. I will get back to him momentarily. But I'm going to make my point, which is MLS getting into the production game. That's a big risk. But with that comes the ability to, if you do a good show, sell advertising. Right. Think about how much the NBA on TNT is worth to TNT.
Yep.
That property is probably worth that property alone. The NBA on TNT, as it is currently with Shaq, Kenny, and Charles, probably draws in enough advertising revenue to almost fund the production of the games that they actually comment on.
Well, they pay billions for it, and they're not losing money on it, so it's worth billions.
Yeah, but I mean the advertising revenue that they draw in off of that, because it is probably soup to nuts the best studio show going right now.
I mean, I agree with you.
Please.
That's
MLS,
what you
go get Kyle Martino. He doesn't have a job right now. Go get him. I think he's fantastic. I really do. And I do not agree with him leaving NBC. I thought he was their best one.
Get Kyle Martino. Number one. Go get Timmy Howard. He's grown up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lot better.
He's
a lot better.
Don't insult me by believing that because I am watching a European sport, I automatically have to hear from somebody who has a European accent.
Don't get Ray Hudson. I love him, but don't go get him.
I agree with you. You know what,
Ray,
Mike? I'm not going to lie to you. I was going to complain about that because the CONCACAF W tournament, they had Paulie, what's her face, on Paramount Plus, and I was like, look, just because it's soccer doesn't mean that the host needs to be British.
That's the worst. Just don't get Alexi Lalas.
There's plenty of Americans who've grown up with the sport.
Go ahead, Matt. You were going to say something.
No, we had this conversation last week. I mean, they've ESPN's drug out another European whose English is actually kind of limited for the studio show, and it's like
magisterial.
Yeah, you learn your lesson.
I love that
guy.
Ray Hudson's at least a little
I love him.
Entertaining.
I love him. I think he's fantastic. But I would love to go get Kyle Martino. If you can't get Tim Howard or something like that, go get some.
I just don't.
Can Chris Wondolowski talk? Like maybe he's pretty good. I don't know. Get some MLS people in there, but also get a guy who is an established voice of soccer that is very, very good at explaining the game and very, very good at giving analysis, who played in that league, who has pedigree of covering the Premier League for a number of years, and to all intents and purposes is actually very good. Go get Kyle Martino.
I mean,
go get somebody else. Get those two guys. Great show. I'm in. $60. I'm in. $70.
Give a group of untested individuals who host a lowly rated podcast that nobody listens.
Hey,
with
you know what?
rotation
Absolutely.
of characters.
Dude, we can do a 10-minute MLS spot. They can post it on there. I guarantee they'd love it. Are you kidding me? They'd love it.
Yeah, and I mean we've got Kenny Smith and Shaq and Barkley vibes going on. I mean,
plus also though, hey, and don't forget, if they want an English guy, remember when we were doing an MLS show to promote London Sean is a Toronto FC fan. So he supports that club. We can all have on a jersey. It'd be great. It'd be great.
All right.
Mike, that's a great idea, brother. We're gonna hook that up.
We're you know what? We're just gonna end that there. All right, gentlemen. It has been.
Wait. Can I say one thing about this? No, can I? First of all, we're 8 minutes short. But could I be allowed to say something about the
Go ahead, Justin.
Women's Euro that I watched?
No.
All the games for.
No.
Oh, man. Go ahead, Mike.
Every time.
We didn't talk about the Women's Euro at all while I was on here.
Okay, fair enough. Go ahead.
England's test is not Spain, and it's not either France or Germany, who they're likely going to get in the final. England's test is Sweden,
who they may or may not face.
Well, Sweden could lose in the next round, but so could England, so could France, so could Spain, or one of England and Spain are going to lose, but so could Germany. Yes, they all could lose, but I'm telling you, their path, I think that they think that the winner of that Sweden game is their easy game in the semifinal, and I don't think so. I think Sweden is better than you think they are. I think Spain is worse than you think they are without Alexis Putellas. And I think France and Germany are going to kill each other. So I think that the best chance for a really hideous upset in this tournament is Sweden versus England in the semifinals. And there you go. There's my hot take. It's like I watch the games.
Yeah.
Are you done?
I mean, do I just get an open platform? Yes. No, I'm done.
No, I want to make sure you're like 100% done. Because are you sure?
Yeah. No, I am. I really am.
All right. So, I got to say that with trepidation because I'm so waiting for Mike to come out and say something. Just one more point. All right, gentlemen, it has been a lot of fun. It didn't go the way that I expected it to, but it never does. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun. Big thanks to Professor Matt and Chelsea Mike, and of course, producer Stead for joining me. We did all right this week. We'll try and do better next week. So for the cast of the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, I am Mike, and have a good week.